All right, we are back. And in this lesson, we are going to be diving deeper into the AWARE method. So I'll be sharing with you the third pillar, the third step. So we have awareness, we have wisdom, and now we're moving into acceptance. So acceptance is very simple. It's just about accepting yourself, accepting your emotions and accepting life as it is. So this stage is essential. We have to feel our feelings. There is no like magic pill, secret trick to get out of feeling your feelings. Can't go over it, can't go around it, can't go under it, gotta go through it. This was a children's song that I grew up with. I'm not sure if you've heard it before, but there was quite wisdom in this children's song. So, what does this actually look like? So, first, we have to talk about the valley of suffering. And the valley of suffering is the space between what is, how things are, and the way that we think things ought to be, how they should be in our minds. This is the valley of suffering. So much of our anxiety, our unhappiness, and lack of fulfillment stems from our mind's very natural and resentless desire for things to be different than they actually are. We think things like, that's not how this should be. We think I should be more this. We think I shouldn't feel this, right? How many times have you been planning a vacation and you spent so much time planning this trip, planning this vacation? You're so excited to go on this hike and go to this beach and do this thing and try that. And all of a sudden, you get there and you feel so unsettled or disappointed. You think you should be having a better time. You should feel happier. They should be more this way, the people you're traveling with. All the shoulds come in. How many times for a special event, for a birthday or a Valentine's Day or a Christmas or a something, a wedding, right, that you've been planning and looking forward to for so long, all of a sudden you arrive and you feel disappointed. You feel like things should feel they should feel different than they are, right? And that's not to say, we do feel natural human disappointment. That's all good. But we create an expectation about how something should be or how we should or shouldn't feel. And when things don't pan out how we expect, we suffer. So when we place our sense of okayness, our ability to feel happy under such narrow conditions, we literally reduce our own ability to feel good by creating a bunch of requirements that need to be a certain way in order for us to feel okay inside. So here's some sentences, some things that we might do. We might say, this vacation isn't going how it should be. We might say, it should be warmer and sunnier outside. We should say, my job should be more interesting. They should be more appreciative of me. Traffic should be moving faster, right? Or the other side of it is we go into comparative suffering. I should be grateful. This global pandemic, we're feeling really sad. We're feeling really unfulfilled. We're feeling a lot. Oh, I should just be grateful. At least I still have my job, right? We go into comparative suffering. We think that our suffering is reduced in comparison to someone else's just because someone else has it worse. But we can't compare suffering like that because it doesn't measure in that way. Suffering is suffering, no matter what form it comes in, right? It's not the stimulus that causes suffering, it's the inner experience of how you interpret that stimulus that creates the suffering. So, we place our sense of okayness and our ability to feel happy under such narrow conditions that we literally reduce our own ability to feel good by creating all these requirements, this like checklist of what needs to happen in order for us to feel okay. And what happens is we start to outsource our happiness to the will of life and our changing mind, which is always changing. So if there's one word that I invite you to just eliminate from your English language right here, right now, in order to feel a lot happier, a lot more fulfilled, a lot more content, delete the word should. Okay? I should feel more this. I shouldn't feel that. Things should be this way. They shouldn't be that way. And it's not to say that we don't have preferences. Certainly, I have a preference. I prefer that people appreciate me. I prefer that people respect me, without a doubt. But what I've come to realize is that how somebody behaves, how they react, how they respond actually has nothing to do with me and has everything to do with their emotional truth that is created from their past traumas, their past, experiences that have made them unable to appreciate or unable to respect in that moment. And so it's actually nothing personal about me. And when they should be treating me this way, I'm outsourcing my sense of okayness at the will of their responses, which I have zero control over. And so better, I focus on what I do have control over. And that is expanding my window of tolerance to feel okay inside. So this is the goal. This is the main goal of Thrive, is to build our tolerance, our resilience towards the unpredictability, the uncertainty, the winds and the waves, the ups and downs of life. And we do that by, one, eliminating this word should from our language, from our vocabulary. So why do we do this? Why do we put ourselves through this valley of suffering, of thinking that things should be different than they are? Many of us are taught from a very young age to not feel our feelings. This is inherited, this is woven into the fabric of our society because big feelings, this is what we're taught, big feelings make other people uncomfortable. How many times were you crying in a grocery store and hushed, don't be loud, don't be emotional, so many times the people around us, and I've done this myself. It's innocent, the intention behind it. But when we say things like, or if we heard things like when we were young, like, it's okay, it's nothing, don't worry about it, you're fine, don't cry, just toughen up, you're a big girl, you're a strong girl, you shouldn't cry about that, right? Whatever the language was that you heard, it made us believe from a very young age not to have big feelings, not to feel sad, not to feel angry, not to have desires, right? We suppress these parts of ourselves. And now, of course, our culture is so suppressed that there's people exploding, there's people imploding all the time, and mental health is at such a decline. So we've been taught culturally that to not feel what we feel if it isn't something good, right? And this is something so ingrained in our culture is, what do we do when we meet each other? We say, hey, how are you? What is the automated response that everybody says? Good, how are you? Right? We're a culture that's obsessed with good. And we have painted such clear labels on certain emotions as being good or bad, positive or negative. And this really keeps us stuck with so much suffering because you're human. You're a human being and you have a nervous system and a beating heart and a pulse, and you are biologically designed to feel all of it. You're not broken if you don't feel amazing all the time. There's nothing wrong with you if you feel anxious or angry. It's not a default in you. You're human, you're supposed to feel it all. So we've been taught that we should feel happy all the time. That's the goal of life, is to feel happy all the time. And I have had the great fortune of traveling across the world for 10 years now, and I have met some incredibly enlightened beings and teachers and meditators and spiritual beings that I am yet to meet a single person that doesn't experience sadness, that doesn't experience anger or frustration. I've lived in ashrams with great enlightened beings, like a high level of self-realization, and I've still watched their body go through emotional experiences. It's amazing. So we think that we should control our negative emotions and just get over them and move on. But the problem is that once we judge certain emotions as being negative, anytime we experience that natural human emotion like fear or worry or self-doubt, we feel as though there's something wrong. We're doing something wrong, or worse, that there's something wrong with us for feeling them, which simply isn't true. So I really want to just affirm this with you right here and right now. It is okay to not feel good sometimes. It's not dangerous. Nothing's wrong with you. Nothing in you is broken. We put so much pressure on ourselves to be upbeat and positive and perfect all the time, and giving ourselves permission to not be okay, to not have all the answers, to not be everything all the time for everyone is such a relief. In my own personal development journey, years ago, there's a very distinct moment in my mind where I consciously took myself off this pedestal of perfection, this image that I projected to the world of being a certain way, always being perfect, having it all together, being so positive all the time, being so responsible, being such a helper, being so spiritual, being all these things that my mind deemed as being, if I'm those things, then I'm worthy, then I'm okay inside, then I'll have approval from others. And because my sense of self-worth was so invested in how other people thought of me, that I needed to hold this image. And I remember very consciously the terror, and it was such an ego trip. I can laugh and smile about it now, but it was very real for me at the time. The suffering that I was in of taking myself off this pedestal of perfection and coming down to earth and giving myself 100% permission to be human and to embody all parts of myself and to coexist with my sadness and my grief and my shame and my vulnerability, and to allow that to exist within myself, within my relationships. And I was terrified. Will people still love me if I'm not perfect? Will people still, want to be around me if I'm not helpful all the time? If sometimes I'm sad, or sometimes I'm, anxious, or I'm all these things. So if you want to give yourself the biggest sense of relief, you take yourself off that pedestal of you need to check all the boxes all the time. You need to be responsible all the time. You need to be this and that all the time. And just give yourself the permission to be as you are, not how you think you should be, not how society has said you should be, but how you are. And sometimes how you are is happy and joyful and grateful and in awe and in wonder. Great. And sometimes how you are is sad, upset, anxious. And that's okay too. So why do we do that? We might be afraid of our emotions. We might be afraid of what we'll find if we really open up to our emotions. But often we're not just afraid of the emotions themselves, we're afraid of the emotions that we hold those emotions in. So it's like this, we might be afraid of our fear. We might grieve our grief. We might be worried about our worry, right? And here's the interesting thing is that 90% of the intensity that we feel emotionally isn't the actual emotion itself. It is the 90% of the emotions that we hold that core emotion in. So what does that mean? Maybe 10% of the emotional intensity that you felt earlier this week, that anxious moment, was actually just the anxiety about time, or about, that thing that you said and you were dwelling on it in your mind, or, that thing with work, whatever it was. Let's say 10% is the actual emotion. Now, 90% of the emotional intensity that you feel is your resistance to feeling that emotion. It's your rejection of it, or the shame that you hold that emotion in, and that's what keeps you stuck. So we may think that if we admit to ourselves that we feel pain, that we're not okay for a moment, that we feel sad or afraid, that if we open up and feel those feelings, that we'll get lost in a downward spiral and never come out, we'll get stuck forever. And perhaps you can relate, if ever in your life, maybe what started your personal development journey was that you were in a very dark place at one point. You were going through a difficult thing. Maybe you were a teenager. You had some mental health concerns going on for you. You were depressed. You went through a divorce. You went through a really difficult thing and you were at your worst, right? It's natural for us to feel afraid of going back there. And so we might be afraid that, oh, if I feel this anxiety, if I feel this sadness, I'm going to end up back there in that very dark place. And that's not the truth. You're not who you were then. You have so much life experience. You've done so much personal development. And here you're gaining the tools of what to do with those emotions, how to be with them, how to nurture them and take care of them. So we might fear that if we accept these emotions that we're giving in or we're losing control, right? But when we stop fighting, when we stop suppressing, avoiding, or distracting ourselves from what we feel, and we just give ourselves the space to feel it, that energy can actually quickly, effectively, rapidly move through the body and out of us, simultaneously giving us back the freedom and control that we're afraid we'll lose if we feel our feelings. So I just want to really affirm this with you here. All the emotions that you feel, they're all okay. Your job is to expand your heart so wide, to expand that window of tolerance, right? We don't want such a narrow set of conditions for us to feel okay. I have to feel happy. I have to feel this all the time. I have to be perfect. I have to be responsible. I have to be helpful. We want to expand our window of tolerance so that sadness can exist, grief can exist, anxiety can exist. There's space for all of them. And underneath the surface of all these emotional experiences, you can experience a deep level of okayness inside. Despite the chaos of what's happening outside of you, despite the chaos of what's happening up here, there's a deep level, an inner knowing that no matter what you feel, joy or anxiety, that you're okay, that this too shall pass. This is simply an emotional experience that by actually opening up to it, you can let it move through you quickly. You can reduce the intensity, reduce the frequency of feeling that. So it's very counterintuitive. No, our instinct is to push it away, to not feel it, to reject it. And yet, how we move through it is actually by welcoming it in, making space for it. So that's how we take back our freedom and control. Now, I always like to clarify, to feel our feelings, to accept our feelings, doesn't mean that we have to like it. Doesn't mean we have to agree with it. I'm not asking you to like the situation. I'm not asking you to like the anxiety. What I'm asking you to do is to just try to witness it and to meet reality as it is without getting lost in your feelings about reality. Okay? When we change our relationship to the feelings, everything changes for us. Those feelings are not the problem. Fear is not the problem. Anxiety is not a problem. Anger is not a problem. Sadness is not a problem. None of your emotions are a problem. The only problem is our resistance to feeling those things. That's what's keeping us stuck in these emotions. That's what's preventing us from really processing them, healing them, and moving on from them, is our resistance to feeling them. So let's understand, what exactly is emotion, okay? Emotion is, the meaning is encoded in the word. So energy in motion, that's what emotion is. It's just energy. And some emotions that we feel are more dense and heavy: depression, lethargy, fatigue, right? Some emotions are more hot and expressive energy. It's anger, passion. Some emotions are more light and kinetic, more changeable and dynamic, like anxiety or worry. And the thing I want you to take away here is that no emotion is good or bad. This dynamic of labeling, this is a good emotion, this is a bad emotion, keeps us in this dynamic of chasing after certain emotions, which puts us in the valley of suffering, or avoiding certain emotions. Again, you'll end up in that valley of suffering because you are supposed to feel all of it. And so as long as we're chasing after something that isn't what is, we suffer. Or so as long as we're pushing away an experience that already is, we will suffer. So feelings aren't good or bad. They're just feelings to be felt. That's it. And this emotional suppression that we might find ourselves in, that emotional energy, right? That energy in motion, if we don't process it up here, that energy has to go somewhere. And where is it going to go? It's going to go inward. It's going to go into the body where it's going to get stored. So emotional suppression, that emotional energy is going to get stored in the body as latent tension, as dormant discomfort, as dis-ease, or as an emotional trigger that lives in your nervous system, that each time you experience something similar to that original event that caused that emotion, then you get triggered and you go into the same emotional response, making us more reactive to similar things in the future. So the other side, there's emotional suppression that goes into the body. There's also emotional dissociation, where we distract ourselves from those difficult feelings in our bodies, those uncomfortable feelings. Maybe we numb ourselves. But what happens is when we try to numb ourselves or avoid or get rid of the negative experiences, which I don't love the negative and positive thing, because they're all just feelings to be felt. It's not good or bad. Some are more comfortable than others. I agree with you, without a doubt. We don't have to like it. But when we numb ourselves from difficult emotions, we also numb ourselves from joyful emotions. We numb ourselves from the ability to feel truly grateful, truly present, truly in wonder, in awe, truly thriving, right? And so some emotions are painful, straight up. We can't deny that. Some are hard. When you feel heartache, you feel physical pain in your chest. No, that's hard. I'm with you. But the way I see it is that we have two choices. Number one is that we can try to protect ourselves from feeling pain, or we can heal the pain, right? Let me give you an analogy, a thorn example, okay? You're walking along minding your own business, and all of a sudden you get a thorn in your foot. And that hurts. The thorn goes in with pain. You have two choices. One, you can take the thorn out in that moment, knowing that it went in with pain, so it's got to come out with pain. It's going to be scary. It's going to be vulnerable. Or two, you can leave the thorn in, knowing that the pain already went in. The pain's always there. It's this nagging discomfort. Eventually, you leave that thorn in, it's going to get swollen, it's going to get infected, and it's going to get really painful, right? If you leave that pain in. So, the way I see it, you can do two things. You can either take the thorn out, or you can try to protect that thorn from being triggered. We can try to protect that thorn from being touched and further going in, or it being touched and it bringing our attention there, and all of a sudden it hurts really bad again. But what happens is if we leave that thorn in, then that pain increases, right? And maybe our mind wants to create this apparatus around that thorn in our foot so that no life experience can touch it. We keep people at a distance. We don't go to certain places to avoid that physical pain from being touched. We stay at home because at home we're safe, because nothing's going to touch that thorn in my foot. I don't have to feel the pain of it. I don't have to be reminded of the pain of it. But in reality, that pain is always there. It's just a subtle nagging pain. Now, we can at any point choose to take that thorn out. Ideally, we do it in the moment. The thorn goes in with pain, we build up the courage, the resilience, we take the thorn out right away, so we don't have to get that infection. We don't have to have it nagging with us in the back of our minds the rest of our lives, not controlling where we go, where we don't, who we see, who we don't. But the reality is that we can take that thorn out at any time. If you're ready to take it out, let's do it right now. And the reality is that that thorn went in with pain. It has to come out with pain. I can't promise you it's not going to hurt when you feel those feelings. That grief stored in your heart from 5 years ago, it has to come out with pain. But what a relief to take that thorn out. Yes, it's painful coming out. It's scary, but it's the relieving kind of scary. It's the good kind of pain, right? So give yourself the permission to feel those feelings, to take the thorn out and know that only good comes from feeling it. So how do we do that? We practice acceptance. So what is acceptance? Acceptance means to surrender to the present moment and witness and accept what is and all that you feel exactly as it is, without coloring the moment based on your experience of it or how you think it should be. We don't feel good when reality fails to meet our expectations. That's human. That's natural. I'm with you. But we can either spend our time and our emotional energy arguing with reality and battling our minds into feeling something different than we currently do, or we can accept what is. What we feel, we can accept what's happening, we can accept reality, we can redirect our emotional and mental energy so that we can make decisions that better serve us and the people around us. So this acceptance is about meeting reality as it is versus how we think it should be. It allows us to respond to the situation versus react automatically to it, and empowers us to create the best possible outcome for ourselves. So, in other words, acceptance is a deep acknowledgement of what is. It's saying, this is the reality that's unfolding before me. I don't have to like it. I don't have to agree with it, but I can acknowledge that this is the reality. This is the truth. And I can spend my emotional energy arguing with reality and battling my mind, or I can accept this is what's happening. And this doesn't mean that we stop there. So acceptance doesn't mean that we don't try to improve our situation, doesn't mean that we don't try to raise life up. We do, absolutely. But where we start, our starting position is acceptance. Acceptance isn't an ending, it's the beginning. When we first accept, then we free up our energy from fighting with what is to accepting what is. And by accepting what is, this is where we truly empower ourselves to actually respond and do something about it. Another quick analogy for you, okay? Fire. The forest is on fire. It's a terrible thing. It's awful. We don't want the forest to be on fire. We don't agree with it. And our mind can either do one of two things. Either in our minds, we are outraged that the forest is on fire. We are complaining. We're saying, who started this fire? This fire shouldn't be happening. I hate that this fire is happening. I'm so afraid of this fire. Look at all the trees that are dying. What about the animals? No, I would be doing that. Or we can invest our mental energy in putting the fire out. We can run around saying, who started this fire? We can argue with reality. But the reality is that that fire is still burning. So better we put the fire out. After the fire's out, sure, then we can get curious. How did this fire start? Why did this fire happening? Who started it? How can I prevent this from happening again? Definitely, we can question that. But better we put the fire out first. We accept that this is the reality unfolding before me. I don't have to like the fire. I don't have to agree with it. But I can accept that this is the truth. By accepting, I enable myself to do something about it. This is the difference. So how do we do that? We embrace our difficult emotions. So difficult emotions like sadness, like anger, or disappointment, they don't feel good, which is another reason why many of us try to avoid them. I get that, I'm with you. But when we allow ourselves to acknowledge our emotions and feel what we feel, we actually reduce the impact, the intensity, and the frequency of those feelings. So science says, actually, neuroscience says that we can only actually feel the full intensity of an emotion for 20 seconds. That's it. But how many of us walk around with this potential energy of emotion ready to explode in us or implode within us, right? We walk around for hours, for days, for weeks with this underlying residual, unprocessed anger or anxiety or sadness. But the truth is that the full intensity of the emotion can only be felt for 20 seconds. So better we just feel it. And when you say, well, no, I felt that sadness for weeks, for days, it wasn't the sadness that you felt. It was the resistance to feeling the sadness that drug it out for days. It was the rejection of that sadness. It was the shame that you held that sadness in. It was the aloneness that you felt with that sadness that drug it out for so long. So we can actually reduce just by feeling our feelings. This is the skill. I wish it was more beautiful, more interesting than this. It's not. The simplicity of it is feel your feelings. So by accepting the difficult emotions and letting them move through us, we can also embody deeper and more genuine states of gratitude, of joy and fulfillment, because our nervous system knows it's safe to feel all this. To the degree that you give yourself the permission to feel your fear is to the same degree that you can give yourself permission to feel your joy. We have to be willing to go on both sides of the spectrum, to be whole, to be human, to embrace all parts of our humanity. So to embrace, to embody, and feel our emotions, it doesn't mean that we need to get lost in them or stay stuck in them forever. To accept what is, to accept what we feel, simply means that we can allow it to move through and therefore out of our bodies unobstructed. So this right here is how we build our anxiety and emotional resilience. So how do we process our emotions? This is it. Sit with it. I wish I could give you this like breathing technique or this specific thing. I wish you could just meditate through it. I wish you could, do something funner, more fun than this. But the truth is, the most powerful way to process your emotions is to simply sit with it, to be with it. So how do you be with your emotions? People say, what should I do? I say, do nothing. People want the magic pill. People want the thing that's going to get rid of the thing. But I'm going to give you tools to regulate your nervous system. We're going to get to that. But unless we have the tolerance to be able to sit with those feelings, then when those feelings come up, if we say, I need a tool to fix this, we're telling our subconscious mind there's something wrong with feeling this. And so we're contradicting. Mentally, we're saying it's safe to feel this, but by outsourcing and saying, I need something to fix this, we're saying it's not okay to feel this. And so we're rejecting it. And that's what keeps us stuck in it. So it's very simple. Be with those emotions. It's okay to feel this. There's no right or wrong way with how you actually sit with it. I say do nothing. Do whatever you want, really. Just don't push it down. Don't distract. Don't numb. Don't avoid. Don't reject. Don't shame. Don't identify. Don't cling to it. Don't hold on. Do whatever you want. You can laugh. You can cry. You can punch a pillow. You can sing, you can scream, just don't close down around those emotions. Be like a loving mother, like a parent, soothing her child. How do we soothe the child? The child is having a meltdown in the grocery store. They want the chocolate bar. Mama says, no, you can't have the chocolate bar. How do we soothe the child? Not by battling. You've seen this in the grocery store. The parent that battles the child is going to get louder, more dramatic, more intense. Then there's a screaming battle between the child and the parent. No? How do we tend to the child? We go to the child. We're present with the child. We validate the child's experience. I know, sweetie, you want this chocolate bar so bad, right? Doesn't mean we have to give them the chocolate bar, but we're present with them. It's okay to feel this. I know you're so disappointed. I hear you. This is really hard. You wish that you could have this chocolate bar. I know, honey. It's okay. We're validating the child's experience. We're validating our experience when we sit with our emotions. Imagine your inner mother, your inner parent tending, right, to your emotional inner child that's having a meltdown, that's feeling anxious. We don't battle the child into not feeling scared. We say, it's okay to feel scared sometimes. Sometimes I feel scared too. And we're validating their experience. We're explaining to them, it's okay to feel this. You just fell. That was scary for you. Your knee hurts right now. It's going to hurt for a few days. You're safe. I'm here for you. I'm with you. This is what it's like, the energy I want you to bring to yourself when you feel emotional pain. Be like that mother, tending to the needs of that child, your emotional self, your higher self. So remember, what we resist persists, what we feel, we heal. So stay open, keep your heart open. Let the emotions move through you, let that energy move through you. Let it come, let it go. And actually, the faster you let it come, the faster you can let it go. It's when you avoid, suppress, then you stay stuck in it for hours, days, weeks. Okay, so that is all for this lesson. We are going to pop back in here with the practical side of it in the next lesson. So I will see you back here real soon.